You know, I've been so busy talking about other issues this week that I almost forgot and glossed over the fact that apparently Justin Amash is now running for president. Now, I have mixed feelings about this. If you had told me, I don't know, a couple of years ago that, Justin Amash was going to run some third-party presidential campaign, I probably would have, received that pretty favorably. Because, of course, it's not like he's going to make a big difference anyway, especially right now with everything going on. People are very partisan. They're not going to be open to hearing about ideas, but so at least he'd go out there, and he's not going to impact the results of the election. I don't think, talking 2 years ago, but he might be able to, just come out as an unknown guy and make some points and maybe get on TV and start planting seeds in people's heads. Because at least. I would have said 2 years ago, Justin Amash is the kind of guy who can go on TV, and he's intelligent enough to where he can represent his ideas, and kind of like Yang, maybe, I guess. Yang comes across as a smart guy who's nice, and even though I don't agree with Yang, I think he tries to do a good job making his points before he turned into a total sellout, endorsed Joe Biden and stuff. Of course, I kind of saw that coming, not to squash on the feelings of the Yang Gang people, but that's a topic for another video. And so generally, for the most part, over the course of his career that I've known who Justin Amash was, I had a pretty favorable opinion of him. He seemed like a relatively principled guy, and of course that doesn't get you very far in Congress, having strong opinions and actually, taking hard stances on stuff. And of course, they can tolerate this to a certain extent on most bills, because most bills don't pass really close to one another. The only time you really get in trouble in Congress for being a maverick is if you do something like Thomas Massie did recently, to where you kind of throw a wrench in their whole system of getting done whatever they want to do, and you make things a little more difficult for them. That's when you kind of get in trouble. And I find it very interesting that Justin Amash did not join Thomas Massie at the time, because if he thought that he was going to be running for president as a libertarian anyway, against the Republican Party, why wouldn't he come out and try and make a big stand about this budget thing, since that's something that he should have been all up in arms about voting for this massive stimulus bill, which a libertarian like him isn't supposed to support anyway. But yet the only person out there railing against this and saying, hey, we should have a recorded vote so that we know who voted for this and who voted against it, because in a couple of years, Massie is, pretty smart when it comes to this stuff, saying in a couple of years this bill's not going to be popular. And so I want to have a record of who voted for it and who voted against it, so that my voters can be confident that I was against this and that I wanted absolutely nothing to do with this bill. And Justin Amash, apparently, we're hearing from back channels and things, did, agree with what Massie was doing, and did end up voting against it, when they did the roll call vote or whatever. I can't remember exactly what ended up happening. I don't think that Massie got exactly what he wanted, but they got something done. But Amash did not try and help him publicly, which, again, seems very strange to me. Why wouldn't you want the publicity, especially since it's something you should agree with anyway? It would have, in other words, it wouldn't have hurt him like it would, say, some of the other people, like I guess Ken Buck is another Republican who was agreed with Thomas Massie, but just didn't want to say anything publicly because he didn't want to stick his neck out there. Everyone was very happy to let Massie do it himself and be the only one to take the blame. But Amash, if he planned on running for president, had nothing to lose and only things to gain, because he could we cite this as an example of, hey, I'm a stand-up guy who stands up for what I believe in, and I believe that this is wrong, and so look at me, I'm so principled. Now, I guess the only thing that could explain that is that maybe Amash actually wasn't planning to do this, and that this really is sort of a last-minute decision, and that, a couple weeks ago he was worried about how much it would hurt him, even though he was, by that point, already left the Republican Party and would almost certainly lose re-election. I don't see what he had to lose on that. It really was a strange thing, which, again, now, just a couple weeks down the line, makes me question his credibility. And that's why I said all those qualifiers at the beginning about how saying, a couple of years ago, I probably would have been pretty enthusiastic about hearing, someone like Justin Amash running for president, even though, he has no chance of actually winning or anything like that. But just as a candidate who goes out there to try and change people's minds, kind of like when Ron Paul ran. But Justin Amash is not exactly Ron Paul 2.0. I don't know, maybe he's a little better than Rand Paul, you could say. I mean, I don't even know that. I mean, Rand Paul kind of ran when he ran for president as a libertarian-ish Republican still. He still used, normal Republican terms. Now, Amash, strangely enough, seems to be going the other way. Rand was very sensitive in trying to appeal to normal Republican voters and make sure that he didn't sound scary like his dad did. But Amash is kind of taking an even worse strategy. And I didn't agree with what Rand did during his presidential campaign, but Amash seems to be kind of appealing to the left, or people on the left who would never vote for him. I mean, even the Never Trump Republicans, who seem to be, at least right now, rather fond of Amash, or at least they did. I don't think they like the idea of him running for president and taking away votes from Joe Biden, which I'll get to that later. But the Never Trump people ideologically are not the kinds of folks who would be in line with someone like Justin Amash. And so are they going to vote for him? No. I mean, the Never Trump Republicans are just going to vote for Joe Biden. So what's Amash doing here? And it's not like he's trying to, change the minds of Never Trump Republicans anyway. I mean, I don't know what he's trying to achieve here. I mean, he's certainly not going to win over any Republicans because over the last couple of years, he's to the extent that he's acquired any sort of a public persona and reputation, it's been as just a normal Never Trumper, which is a pretty boring label. You're not in very good company. You're with folks like Rick Wilson, who nobody likes. If anything, I think the average Republican, to the extent that they've ever heard of Justin Amash, now that I say it, probably this goes also for your average Democrat who has heard of Amash, if they have at all. They would think of him more as like a young John McCain. And now ideologically, I mean, he should be, in theory, the polar opposite of John McCain. John McCain was, in favor of the state at every turn. He wanted more wars. He wanted more laws. He wanted more restrictions, more taxes. John McCain just loved the government in every way. But unfortunately, over the last, 4 years or so, politics has turned, your political orientation is all based on where you stand vis-a-vis Trump. And because, Amash has come out as a very someone who's strongly critical of Trump, in a way that appeals to the left, and that Amash kind of shows contempt for Trump as a person on a personal level, in that he thought that Trump should be impeached because he abused his powers as president. I guess he did make his case, and people, seemed to, and I read his case at the time that he put out on Twitter in a big thread. I could see where he was coming from, and maybe it is just honestly how he feels, but the way that that's going to come across to almost everyone who sees it is that it just seems like everything that the Democrats are saying. Now, I understand his is a little more nuanced and maybe not, but I mean, you can't get away from the reputation that he's garnered at this point. And so the point is that he's not a clean slate who can go out there and make some sort of ideological campaign and just start talking about ideas. And even if he's not attracting votes, change people's minds. Because as soon as Justin Amash starts talking, most people, who are going to hear him are already going to have an opinion about what he's going to say. It doesn't matter what he says, because he, as a person, already is established, vis-a-vis Trump. So either Democrats are going to go, oh, he's one of those sensible Republicans, or Republicans are going to go, he's one of those, never Trump rhinos, terrible people. We got to get rid of him. He's just like one of those, one of the loony left. And so I guess he's saying that he's going after the what you could call maybe a silent majority of people who are upset with our political system and are not involved in the partisanship. But I don't know where those people are. I mean, to the extent that someone is politically disengaged, they're not going to even know, who the Libertarian or Green Party candidate is. The only people who really know about the third party folks are people who are so heavily invested in watching the presidential campaign that they take time to acknowledge that there are other parties other than the Democrats and the Republicans who do nominate candidates every 4 years. And so what's your strategy for trying to actually contact these disaffected people who are tired of, our two-party system? What are you going to do, go on CNN? Well, if you go on CNN, you're talking to, the kind of people who watch cable news are politically engaged, and they're highly partisan. That's why news is so partisan. It's about attracting people and keeping their eyeballs on the TV. So if you go on CNN, you're going to be talking to a bunch of Democrats who are never going to vote for you. They'll just pat you on the head and say, oh, you're one of those good Republicans who doesn't like Trump. And if you go on Fox, you're going to get shouted down for being against Trump and a traitor and someone who's going to spoil the election and throw it to Joe Biden or whoever, assuming Joe Biden is actually nominated and survives. But either way, the viewers who are going to be watching Fox are not going to be receptive to what Justin Amash has to say. So I guess you can say, well, he could try doing an internet campaign like Ron Paul did. Well, that takes a lot of organic enthusiasm and genuine grassroots support and things, and I don't see how he's going to do it. Maybe he could do it. Ron Paul pulled it off and got a lot of people engaged on the internet, on sites like Reddit and 4chan and other places at the time. But, Amash doesn't really have the energy to do that sort of a thing, because Trump and Bernie did something similar. They had very strong online followings. And Yang did too, to a much smaller extent, but I don't think that Amash is going to be that interesting to people. He doesn't, he's not cool. And I hate to be that glib about it, but I mean, that's what matters in politics. Do people like you? Because, believe it or not, it's a popularity contest. Hello? That's why democracy sucks. But, that's the rules that we live under. And so, frankly, I mean, I don't think that, Amash is really going to accomplish much. Someone who I was, maybe I'm a little bit biased, because I was looking forward actually to Jacob Hornberger, who prior to Amash getting in was the favorite to be the Libertarian nominee. And the reason for this is because, as someone who has read Jacob Hornberger's blog posts for a long time, very familiar with the guy, I know that he's a very competent person who comes across well and is a very mild individual. And to the extent that he gets any attention, I think he's going to handle himself and do a good job and be received positively by people, because he's a nice guy. He's very smart, and you're not going to out-debate him or back him into a corner to where you get him to say something stupid like, what is Aleppo, or what are these other things that, dumbasses like Gary Johnson like to say on TV. And sure, he's not going to be getting on TV since Jacob Hornberger's not a congressman or anything like that. He's just a lawyer, who's been writing a lot of stuff for a long time and has been an activist lawyer for, longer than I've been alive. But I think he does have a much better chance of getting that sort of online following and that old magic that people like Trump and Yang and Ron Paul and Bernie were able to tap into. He's got much more of that quirkiness to him. And of course, it helps that he's actually right on everything, and his priorities absolutely straight. And you ask him about the CIA, he's going to give you the red pill on the CIA. You ask him about the war on drugs, he's going to give you the red pill on the war on drugs. You ask him about the war on anything, he's going to give you the pretty absolute, grade A stuff that you want to inject directly into your veins. And I think that, if the Libertarian Party, which I've never taken seriously in my life, ever does want to be taken seriously and doesn't want to consider itself to be a joke, which, that 2016 convention that people still pass around clips of, very damaging to them. And I thought it was funny. I went there to watch because I thought it was going to be entertaining. I wasn't disappointed because, of course it was in Orlando, so it wasn't that far of a drive for me being in Florida. But, is there part of me that wants them to do somewhat well and take themselves seriously and be taken seriously? Sure, because of course, I share a lot of their ideological things. Of course, the people that run the party are rather left-wing in orientation. You get people like Nick Sarwark who are just absolute tools, and somebody like Jacob Hornberger is someone I would consider to be a normal, well-adjusted human being. He's much more intellectual than someone like Bob Barr or Gary Johnson or whatever washed-up Republican that they want to put up there. And sure, is Justin Amash much smarter than Gary Johnson? Absolutely. That's a very low bar. And I'll tell you that Amash just leaps over that hurdle of being smarter than Gary Johnson. But I just don't know who's going to take you seriously by running another washed-up Republican other than maybe the mainstream media. Because that's exactly what Gary Johnson said at the time, and his supporters. I remember being at the convention. They're like, hey, who else is going to get on CNN but Gary Johnson? Because, I was a governor of New Mexico. People know who I am. I can get on TV, and that was his big promise. And you know what? He got on TV, and what did he do? He fell flat on his face. Because he's a jackass. Because, even if Amash got the same sort of attention that Gary Johnson did and did a little bit better of a job, is he going to talk about the right stuff? What's he going to talk about? Is he going to get up there and is he going to say how awful and immoral the war in Yemen is, and how genocide is a bad thing, or how, locking people in prison, that's not very nice? How the CIA overthrowing governments, the CIA who was never elected by anybody, creating all these enemies for us around the world that still hate us, places like Iran, creating all this trouble, torturing people, all the crimes that they've committed. You think he's going to talk about that very much, or do you think he's going to talk more about how, this Trump, he pushed me right out of the Republican Party because he's just so mean. And I think that being a Republican was about being nice, but I learned now that I'm wrong. So I joined the Libertarian Party because they're nice people, and Republicans are mean. And Democrats, while I'm not one of them, at least they're nice people. It's kind of like what Bill Weld said about Hillary Clinton. I think at one point in the campaign, Bill Weld, Gary Johnson's vice presidential candidate, as much of a joke as that was, he came out and I think said he was going to vote for Hillary Clinton. And it's like, wait, you're not voting for yourself? Now, I know I shouldn't hold, Bill Weld against Justin Amash. He's not Bill Weld. He's obviously a very different person. But still, can we just quit for one cycle with the LP nominating washed-up Republicans? And I think Hornberger, unlike Amash, has actually been involved with the Libertarian Party for many decades. And so, he's somewhat familiar with not only, the people who run it, but just how to think and say things. And most importantly, attack the left from the left and the right from the right. Because it's not just about saying the right things. It's about saying the right things in the right way to the right audience. When you're on CNN, you're going to talk about very different things than you're going to talk about when you're on Fox News. Scott Horton, who's, by the way, one of the greatest podcasters of all time. He's done over 5,000 episodes. Everybody should go listen to his show. Is a good friend of Hornberger, and he keeps floating the idea that if Hornberger gets the nomination, which before Amash looked like a sure thing. His idea was that every month they would switch off. 1 month they'd go bashing Biden all the time, and then the Republicans would come out and say, "Hey, look at this guy. He's smart, attacking Biden. Ha ha ha. Biden's so dumb." And then the next month he'd just attack Trump for a full month, and then the left-wing media would like to have him on and say, "Hey, look at this guy saying how bad Trump is," and just go back and forth. And that's a lot better than whatever Gary Johnson was planning to do, and I think it's probably a lot better of an idea than whatever the hell Justin Amash is planning to do. Because with the impeachment stuff, even among libertarians that lean right, you're not going to find many people that thought that impeaching Trump was such a great idea, or that this is something that we absolutely had to do. It seemed like just like all impeachments, just like the impeachment of Bill Clinton, a very blatant political ploy. And so Amash on his own, just like Trump, is going to be a polarizing figure from the beginning for anybody who's already heard of him. And once people find out about him, what are they going to learn about him? Are they going to learn about his ideas and how he has a fresh face and how he just has these new ideas that nobody's heard before? No, they're going to think, hey, you're some Cato Institute clone and you're a never Trumper. Get out of here. So that's about all I have to say on him for now. I guess we'll see what he ends up doing with his campaign. I hope that all the goodwill that Hornberger's built up within the LP, going around all these state conventions and trying to nominate delegates that actually support him, not anybody else, is going to be enough to stop old Amash from just coming in and sweeping this away. But we'll see. So if you get anything of value out of this video, I'd appreciate you clicking that like button and sharing this video. And if you haven't already, please do subscribe, because I do upload every day and I'd hate to have you miss one. So I'll see you folks back here tomorrow.